All right. This will just be like a bit of an intro to the interview itself. So, this interview is between me, the interviewer Ryan Pfeiffer, with my interviewee Matthew Connor about his Irish heritage and how it can be visually translated into a poster design about who he is and how he would like to be represented in a more like designed way. So I guess we'll just get straight into the questions. All right, we're just gonna start off with the first question about personal and family background. Can you share a personal story or memory that feels important to your identity?
So I would say a story that feels pretty relevant to my Irish identity is essentially just the story of my family. They uh, came from Ireland in the 1800s and migrated to Australia. And so I feel this is the most personal angle that I can take with this question. Um, yeah, essentially, both my mother's and my father's side came here because they were having troubles in Ireland. And so, yeah, that's basically just the most personable thing I can suggest with this question. Also, with my last name, it's very stereotypically Irish. So, yeah.
All right, that was really good. We'll go into the next question. Still in the same category of personal and family background. So what aspects of your Irish culture or history have shaped you most personally?
Well, I would say that I have taken a lot of influence from Irish culture, as probably have most Australians, even if they're not of Irish heritage. And this is partially simply because of the amount of Irish emigration over the years to other English speaking nations, such as Australia. But a huge cultural transmission of Irish culture in the world, um, from arts and literature to cuisines.
Would you say there's any like big traditions that your family does, like an annual or like a celebration for like a holiday that you would have in Ireland, something along those lines?
For me and my family personally, I'd say a huge Irish tradition is the tradition of drinking. So, me and my family get into it quite a bit, and this is definitely something that is influenced by Irish culture. They are huge into enjoying alcoholic beverages with their meals. It's also notable that may some people may not know this, but AFL, the most popular sport in Australia now, is heavily influenced by Gaelic football, which is an Irish tradition. So I would say that's a another pretty heavy influence of Irish on not just me but all Australians, as it is the most popular sport.
All right, we'll move on to the last question in the same category. Um, so are there like any family traditions or like intergenerational practices that you still hold on to? Probably circa your family emigration from Ireland to Australia. Just something that's like more of like a safe keep celebration, or I don't know, a holiday that might not be celebrated as much here in Australia.
Well, I wouldn't say there's necessarily any um, inherently Irish family traditions that we celebrate here in Australia that often, apart from drinking and sort of watching AFL.
Hmm.
Um, but those are very loose and not specific to Ireland, so I wouldn't say necessarily. Um,
All right, we're just going to the next category. So far, so good. Next category is on cultural representation. And specifically, what do you feel is most often misunderstood or stereotyped about Irish culture? Also, I've put the questions in the chat so you can just read from there if you want to. If not, I can just read it out so you can hear it being spoken, I guess.
What do you feel is often misunderstood or stereotyped about Irish culture? Well, from the time I went to Ireland, I can't speak on them, but from an outsider's perspective, it seems that other places in the world have a very cartoonized version of Irish people in their heads because they have a silly accent and have you not. But when you go there and have real conversations with them, you barely even sort of notice their accent. And also, some people make a stereotype of them having like anger issues and alcoholism and stuff like that, but none of that is particularly prevalent from my experience. So I would say those are potential misunderstood stereotypes.
All right. We're going to the next question in the same category. Are there any Irish cultural expressions like music, storytelling, design, landscape, even like language, that you wish had greater visibility in mainstream media? So kind of just the stuff that's not really or ever like talked about or visualized through, like movies, TV shows, cartoons, memes, even like just general social media and modern media.
So I think what is sometimes overlooked by people who have not been to Ireland and are not completely familiar with Ireland is that the landscape and the architecture, they're very, very beautiful. It is an extremely rainy climate, so you'll find a lot of the farmlands and forests and stuff like that are extremely green, like notably green. Um, and it's a land of such beautiful textured architecture, and this dates back to, you know, thousands of years. And I just thought it was so beautiful to just appreciate the landscape of Ireland, even down to its beaches are also so beautiful. So I think that is an aspect of Irish culture that is sometimes overlooked because I don't hear many people talking about the aesthetic, natural beauty of Ireland as well as its lovely architecture.
All right, that was good. Um, Thanks for covering the like I don't know what to call it. uh, just like the little things I added, just like the topics inside the question. So we'll just go to the last question for this uh overall topic. Is there a moment when you felt like your cultural background was overlooked or it's another word, like undervalued to a point?
Well, I suppose for this I could say that since primary school, since my surname is O'Connor, and um, that is so stereotypically an Irish last name, probably the most stereotypical one. In primary school, I was often asked, "Oh, your surname is O'Connor. Can you tell me a bit about your Irish heritage?" And I didn't have an answer because I'd never been there. I didn't know anything about it. I couldn't point to it on a map. And so they'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, potentially you're not as Irish as you think because you don't know this much about it. But
Mm-hmm.
how could I not? How could I just know that instinctually?" Um,
Yeah. So how did that kind of like change when you actually went to Ireland for the first time? So like you just said then, like in primary school, that because of your last name, people would assume that you'd know something about Ireland or just like general knowledge or like language knowledge about being Irish. So how did that kind of change when you went to go visit for the first time? Just get like a bit of like a you know kick in the face with Irish culture.
so you have to go there, learn about it, have real experiences with the people and the culture, And so, as over time I have grown to know so much more about it nowadays, I feel like that is a problem that is very much solved. Okay, so we're now in visual and symbolic elements.
Yep. We'll just move on to the third topic out of the, I think I've done six. Yeah, document in the chat has six. So first question in the third topic, visual and symbolic elements, is which symbols, imagery, or colors do you feel strongly represent Ireland or your personal connection to it? So just kind of like, not to make it sound dumber than it should be, but like, what is kind of the vibe that you get off of Ireland as someone that comes from Irish culture and Irish heritage? Yeah.
So, Ireland has a couple of extremely notable, worldwide renowned cultural symbols. So, for example, the four-leaf clover
Mm-hmm.
is very much an Irish thing, and this is, of course, a symbol of great luck because it's so rare. And it also has the green element, the very green element, which is linked back to the very rainy green landscape of Ireland. So I would say that this is the most, strong symbol of Irish culture to me. It's even used on a lot of their sporting flags. For example, the Irish cricket team, I believe, has it on it. So, this is something that they're very much embrace, or we're very much embracing of. And yeah, personal connection to it. Never found one, but I think it's an awesome symbol. So yeah, I would say that.
All right, that was a good answer for that question. Very succinct. So we'll move on to the next one. Probably the biggest question that I've written down in the document so far. So we can just break it up into little bits, or we can just do it in one whole block. As long as I guess you read the document. Oh, you have it. Okay, cool. So does typography, storytelling, or visual language from Ireland stand out to you? Things like manuscripts, Celtic patterns, bar signage, architecture, or even modern Irish design identity.
So I would say typography in Irish would take more of a Gothic approach. Now, a Gothic approach isn't necessarily my style of, designing typefaces and using typography in my design, but I do certainly respect it, and there's no doubt that elements of this Gothic design typeface situation influence must be taken from it and must have been used in typographies that we now use day to day that we don't even think about. It's 100%. So even without knowing or fully acknowledging it, the influence would still be there. And furthermore, going back to the architecture of Ireland, as there was so much Irish uh, emigration to Australia, there was bound to be an awful lot of inspiration in the architecture of Australia, and you see this in a lot of the older cities, not so much the newer cities, but things like castles are very much inspired by that region of the world. So I would say that.
All right, very quick, very good. So we're into the last question for this topic. So, are there any contrasts between how Irish culture visually represents itself and how outsiders portray it or may portray it through things like stereotypes and whatnot? If you want to take a bit of like time to think about the question, just feel free. We can just have like a break or something. I'm just gonna edit this into the interview recording. So we went on a break for about like 10, almost 10 minutes, I would say. Um, I don't think it was recorded, so unfortunately I can't put it into the assessment. But basically, we're just talking about I don't know, just uni stuff, I guess. But yeah, just uni stuff like and just some stuff that's a bit off topic but somewhat related that I might end up putting into the assessment. But yep, we'll go back to the interview.
So I would say the average outsider would have a very maybe limited view of Irish culture. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily something that people are too informed about from experience. I mean, even I wasn't informed about it until into my teenage years. And so I'd say there's a stereotype about Irish people being potentially, having anger issues and shouting and, maybe a bit of alcoholism and also just being very animated with their accents. And, you know, I think that, of course, there's a little truth to that, but
So like, would you say that actually experiencing what Ireland and what Irish culture and like even people are like in reality, kind of, I guess, made your view of Ireland more concrete and like I guess it's just like a bit more factual to a point. Yeah, I guess just solidified exactly what you know Ireland to be without the obvious stereotypes and negative, I guess, social views of Irish people and Ireland.
yeah, I think basically going to the land and interacting with the people, it doesn't even have to be in Ireland, but interacting with Irish people and people of Irish heritage really helps you understand that this isn't necessarily the case, as is with all stereotypes though. So, yep, for intercultural experience now.
All right, so we'll move on to the fourth topic about intercultural experience. So the first question would be, have you noticed differences between life in Ireland and life here in Australia that affect how you see yourself?
Well, I have only been to Ireland once,
Oh,
but
okay.
from this experience and also anecdotal experiences from my family who have been there a multitude of times, I would say that Irish people sometimes have like an interesting, like self deprecating humor that is often shared with the British people. Um, and so I would say that us here in Australia, we don't necessarily have that. Um, and furthermore, I would say that life in Ireland and life in Australia, it's different in the micro, but not the macro. So, for example, things like the weather is certainly very different here in Australia, very sunny. I don't know how I'd be able to survive living in Ireland with all the overcast, rain, and such. But, when we think about big issues that define our culture, like language and political ideology, religion, Ireland and Australia are very similar in that aspect. So, how do you balance your Irish identity with being a part of another cultural environment? Well, I think this is relatively simple because as Australians, most of us have, generational history in Europe. And so we're all essentially, or a lot of us, sorry, are in the same boat of, we have our grandparents or great grandparents' heritage in, whether it be Ireland or Austria, and it doesn't have to impact our day to day life too much, but it's certainly in the back of our heads that we're from there, and we like to embrace their culture and stuff like that.
All right, so we'll go on to the last question in the topic of intercultural experience. So, what are some common misconceptions people here in Australia might have about Irish people, and how do you usually respond? So, I mean, to be fairly honest, it'd probably be just like stereotypes. I'm assuming, um, and things along those lines. But yeah.
So I'll just reiterate about, the cultural stereotypes, alcoholism. People say anger issues. People say that they have like a, self-deprecating humor. And this is relatively true sometimes, but
And like, how do you respond to things like that in everyday life if you were to experience stuff like that?
how do I respond? I mean, I don't have too much of a problem with these stereotypes. They're not too harmful, I'd say. But I mean, it's unfair if you haven't interacted with a large amount of the people, or done your research about that culture. So how do I usually respond? Well, I haven't really faced an awful lot of Irish racism, I'd say. So I can't really say.
All right, we'll just go on to the next question that you got up there. If you want to just read that out while you got it up.
Do you feel that design, art, or storytelling from Ireland has influenced your worldview in particular ways? Design, art, or storytelling from Ireland? Well, there are a couple Irish bands I like, a couple Irish rock bands. So I would say that has influenced my day-to-day life, I would say, in the most way. Um, Myths, sayings, and chants. Hold on, I'm gonna look up some Irish myths.
No, sorry, just take your time. Sure, you just gotta like jog your memory or something.
Yeah, I just looked up some quotes. We don't really say them here. They're pretty cool. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. These are pretty dope, but no, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'd use these in Australia.
If you want to just like read out the last few questions while you got them up, they'll be kind of short, so you can kind of just steamroll through them, I guess, if you want to.
If there was one personal or cultural story you'd want this project to highlight, what would it be? I would say, well, the most notable thing to bring up here would be the famine that my um, ancestors endured in the 1800s before they came to Australia. So I would say that, I mean, this is just such like a devastating story. It's a bit of a bring down of the mood, but yeah, I'd say that's the most culturally significant thing that um, you know I would want this project to highlight, probably. And this says personal, but I would say that is personal, as like I have learnt about it basically my whole life, and how my ancestors like endured this famine, and how they came to Australia for a better life. So I would say that is still personal. How would you like to see your story visually translated? How would I like to see it translated? I mean, well, that's up to the artist, I'd say. But for a couple of suggestions, I would certainly use a great deal of green. That would make sense. Perhaps some gothic fonts, and then whatever theme that you choose to go with, whether that be misunderstanding or stereotypes, famine, understanding. Yeah, that could be pretty awesome. What do you want people outside of Ireland to better understand about Irish culture from this project? So, that's a good question. I mean, it's basically just all about understanding, right? So, if you have any stereotypes or preconceived notions about Irish people, it's important to, you know, go meet with Irish people or people with Irish heritage, see if they can give you a bit of extra insight. Maybe just about connectedness and understanding is super important. Is there anything that I feel should be avoided in representing my culture visually? Potentially some of the negative stereotypes, like maybe not like a bottle of whiskey. Probably not. I mean, you can, but I'd say that is more stereotypical than representative of the culture. So I would say, yeah, yeah, basically that. So yep, those are the questions. Awesome as.
Alright, yeah, thank you for being part of the interview and part of the project. So I'll just like hit you up later for uh other questions and stuff along the road, and then the iteration feedback and whatnot. Yeah. Alright. See you probably like next week or something like that. Alright. See you, dude.